We are thrilled to have Jen and Kat here to present to you about good content writing. It's just going to be great. So as you know from the title of the presentation, users first, tips for great writing. And we have Jen Wright, do you want to wait? Perfect. She is the Assistant Director of Strategic Communications with UMac. And we have Kat Webb, who serves as the content and copywriter for UMac. So Jen has more than 20 years of experience in higher ed communications, with much of that time spent in web content writing, editing, and management. She has been in her current role at USU since January 2021. Thank you for being here. We're glad. And she focuses primarily on crisis communications, high-level university initiatives, and working with the Department of Public Safety and the Office of Equity. Kat joined Utah State and the marketing team also in 2021 after several years of working as a local Utah public radio and print journalist. Near and dear to my heart. She loves the variety of projects through USU's marketing department, from writing and editing website content to TV and radio ads, with some opportunities for long-form feature reporting thrown in. So we're going to dive right in, let these lovely ladies take us to the next level with our web writing. Let's go.
I sound louder in my head than I usually do. So, I'm Jen, and this is Kat, and Julie just did a lovely job of introducing us, so we can jump right in after a brief disclaimer. We have years of expertise in web writing and editing and content management and strategy. However, we do not have a lot of experience with public speaking and presentations, so don't judge us harshly if we fumble around a bit. We do spend most of our time behind the keyboard, not listening. So we will jump in. Thanks for attending. This is our session on users first. Again, you're sensing a theme already today. Tips for great web writing. And what we'll cover today, we have several pieces for you. First of all, I will go over some big picture questions to think through when you get asked to write something for or put something on your website. Then Kat will discuss some common web writing and organization mistakes and how to get past those. We'll go through some to-do tips that will make your content more user-friendly and also consistent with university branding guidelines. And then finally, we'll talk a bit about the big new thing in content creation, AI, and what it's useful for, what it's not useful for, and how to get started playing around with it to make it work for you. Another theme for today. Now what? Whether you have been asked to write about like an upcoming event, or you're given some copy from a content creator about a new program, or you're asked to look over your website to make it more readable, there are some questions that you should ask yourself before you even get started. Your first consideration should be your audience, their goals, and your goals. And I was rewriting my notes on this section frantically while Julie was talking, because she did such a good job of going through thinking about who your audience is in the context of web content strategy. However, that approach is also really important just for individual pieces of information and communication that you're putting on your site. So you are thinking about who your site speaks to, who your main users are, who is your site created to speak to. And these are your primary and secondary audiences. I was going to do audience participation and ask you to name some of those. Julie already did that, so we're just gonna move on. Let's see. Oh, how do I scroll? Down? No? Sorry. Here. Will that? Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. So you have your audiences identified. You're thinking about what are their needs? What are they looking for in this bit of information? What tasks are they trying to accomplish? And then what are your goals? Why are you putting this on your website in the first place? What are you hoping to get out of it? Whatever that is, make sure that you include it for your users as a next step. You can provide a sign-up link for event registration, contact information for people to learn more, anything that moves them forward to your goal. And if you don't know why you're putting information on your website, go back and ask questions. If it seems like the information is incomplete or there isn't a clear next step that you're guiding people toward, find out what that information is and include that when you post something. Because if you don't know why you're putting something on your site, it's probably not going to be very useful for your audience either. Now Kat gets to talk.
All right, so between Julie and Jen, you guys have a great idea of what your audience is and who and why they're coming to your site. So basically, now you've got the hard job of making them stay on your site once they get there. And here are some examples of what not to do to get them to stay on your site and actually follow through with what you're wanting them to do. Your first mistake is if you decide to skip the outlining stage. I know it's a lot more fun to just jump into Omni or OU Campus and start working. It seems like a superfluous step to pull open a Word doc and start there, but you're gonna get lost, and so is your audience if you're just jumping in and diving into your content without strategizing, and you'll miss a lot of the key points that you went through in the outlining stage and determining who your audience is and what their goals are. So you want to think of like the who, why, and what of your website as puzzle pieces, and then when you're outlining and drafting, you're putting that puzzle together. And also when you're outlining, especially if you use a third platform, you can catch a lot of those little minor spelling errors and grammar things that will crop up when you're writing. So start with your key list, and you want to start with the most important up top. Julie talked about above the fold, which I love as a newspaper person. If it's a piece of information that your audience needs to know in order to complete your next steps, you don't want to have it at the bottom of the page. You want it at the top. And when you have your purpose up top, that also helps them realize, oh, I'm on the right page. I can keep reading rather than immediately seeing that top line and thinking, oh, this is not what I signed up for, and bouncing off your website. And as we've talked about, you'll catch key errors. A lot of the nice thing about like using Word or Google Docs is that it's got some fancy little AI that helps catch your errors, and it can even make suggestions to have your writing get better as you're typing. Omni and OU Campus don't really do that. They won't catch anything if you spell it wrong, if you miss a word, if you have extra words. It's all going to end up on there until you're in the proofreading stage. And also, if you're using one of those Word docs or Google Docs, you can share that with other people on your team and get their perspective. It's a lot easier to do that than send out the editing link for Omni or making sure that they have access. And if they edit things, they might break your website. So it's better to send out a Word doc where there's low stakes. Then the next mistake is failing to use keywords. Does anyone know what a keyword is off the top of their head in terms of SEO and web content? Yes. Yep, a keyword is a search term, perfect. And so these are perfect for search engine optimization. And this brings your audience to your page directly from Google or wherever they're looking for things. So you always want to circle back to our theme of the day and think about your user. Before you even get started, think about what questions they might have and maybe write them all down. If you were coming to your website, what would you like to learn? If you see words that are repeated multiple times, there's a good chance those are good keywords for you to use and plug into your content as needed. But this can be tricky because we are not writing for robots. And so search engine optimization, it uses algorithms and computers, but people don't think the same way. So they're great to bring new people to your site, but you also want to be strategic with them and make sure that your writing is easy to understand. And if you're just plugging in all the keywords possible, chances are it's going to get pretty clunky pretty fast. And as Google algorithms and other search engines evolve, they start to see, oh, this person's talking a lot about this, but their website doesn't actually have any content that helps people in that industry. We're going to dock them points. in our little list of who shows up first. So you always want to make sure that you're being accurate and not having misinformation on your website. And so you don't want to make things too complicated when we're writing for humans. We like short sentences. So you want your copy to answer those key questions that your audience is going to have going into things and be accurate so that you don't get the bounce rate that's super high. So a good rule when you're writing for humans is to base it off your outline. I mean, there's a whole reason we make that the first step. It's got your key information organized in a hierarchy of what you need readers to know and when. So if you just plug that directly into your website, chances are you've got a good layout. And if you need to have other things, you want to organize it appropriately and not overload your page. Because when you're writing, less is more. A lot of the time, like Julie and Jen have mentioned, the people that are coming to you have a lot of information. They are experts in their field. When they tell you to go put it on the web, it's hard to know where to start. But you don't want to do all of it. You want to make it readable for people. So when you stick with your outline, stick with your essentials, that tells you the order. You want to keep it no more than 3 lines at a time. You want to make it so it's easy for people to scan and see exactly what points they're taking away. So use bullet points if you've got paragraphs that have common themes. Use numbered lists if there's an order of steps people need to take. And this also helps boost your SEO because you can use those in your headlines. And then, as Julie mentioned, if there's another page that has the same information, just link to it. If you're repeating it on your page, especially the biggest no-no, just copying and pasting it from one page to the next, then you're going to get really docked in SEO. Then your search engine you're going to Google it, and they're going to be all the way at the bottom of the page instead of at the top because it's just thinking that you're stuffing keywords in. And there we go. Read your copy out loud, too. This helps both catching those minor errors that we've talked about, and also, as you're going to learn more about in the next speaker, accessibility. Screen readers are huge for people with visual impairments. If it's hard for you to understand what you're talking about when you're reading things out loud, people that don't have that visual guide are going to have an even harder time following your steps. So when you have long ideas, break them into shorter, more easily digestible sentences. And also with your links to things, make them descriptive. Instead of saying, learn more, or click here, tell people what they will be learning when they click that link. Instead of visit our page, say register for WebCon 2023. And this kind of got brushed over, but the last step is all about CTAs. These are calls to action. You need to have clear next steps for the people that come to your page. And this is how we do that. So, I went too fast, sorry. But some examples of calls to action, like I just talked about, are those little buttons that say register for our event. Say your webpage is about a speaker series. You could use that speaker series title as your button to get people to register. You get a head count for the event, and as a bonus from a marketing perspective, you also get contact information. So you can add them to a list of leads where you can say, hey, do you want to sign up for our departmental newsletter? Would you like to learn more about this degree we're offering? And these buttons are your friend in marketing. And now I'm going to turn the stage back to Jen.
Thank you, Kat. All right, now she's taken you through some common mistakes and how to avoid them. So we'll go through some other things that you can do to make your writing and content even better. The first tip is to use you language or second person language, and this is pretty simple. In general, you want to write to your audience as if you're talking to them. So that means avoiding the third person as much as possible. Like, I'm not standing up here saying the presentation audience should make sure they are writing to their users as if they're talking with them. I am saying you do this, like you write to them like you're having a conversation. And a sentence like students can sign up at blah, blah, blah is not as inviting or as good of a call to action as register now on a button. But there are some places where you writing doesn't work. You might be asked to write a press release. You might be asked to write a profile of an alum. You might need to put out an official statement of some sort from your department or office. And there, the third person writing that you usually would use in a news story, that's going to be more appropriate. Making text scannable. So Kat touched on this on her tip on not overloading your pages. And the irony of this presentation is we are up here giving you advice on how to make all of your copy better, when the reality is very few people will read every word on your website. In general, user behavior is to get to a page, scan very quickly from top to bottom, and then they go back to the section that they think has the information they're looking for. So to help them get to that place that they're looking for, you can use headings. And you can think of those as labels or mini headlines that you put in your text wherever you start a new section or topic in your content. Usually they're about 2 to 4 words that summarize what people will find there. So Kat talked about using keywords. Headings are a great place to include those. Make it really obvious what people will find in that part of the page. You don't want to lead them astray or frustrate them by not being clear. And as you're incorporating these headings into your pages, make sure that you're using your heading styles in proper order. We're really lucky that our CMS comes with standard heading styles already created for us. So we don't really have to think about, coding anything properly, but we do need to think about the order that we use these in. So we have H1s, heading ones. Those are for a page title or a headline. H2, heading 2, will be for a main section of your content. And H3, or heading 3, a subsection within that main section. And you can keep going with these. Like you can have multiple H3s, heading 3s inside a main section, and then you can bounce back to another main section. You can go as far as having H4s and H5s if you really want to drill all the way down and use lots of headings. But however many you use, don't skip the levels or change the order of these around just like for looks. Like you might like the font of a heading 4 better than the heading 3, but you don't go from heading 2 to heading 4. Doing that will actually affect like the readability of your page, its consistency with other pages and how people are used to seeing information organized across the site. And it affects accessibility for people who are using screen readers, and it can also ding you on your SEO. Always think about accuracy, and I'm also going to throw in style because I work in UMac, and so it's one of my priorities to make sure that people are aware of university branding and what that means. Accuracy, Kat mentioned it because it is absolutely key in making sure your site is useful for people. Inaccurate information does not help anyone. It can be damaging, as a matter of fact. And you can think of style as the thing you use to help make your site match with the rest of the university. So always double checking your names. People, department, buildings, we have so many to keep track of at the university, so make sure you have them right. Verifying dates and times. These, I swear, like 50% of the first draft of anything you'll get about an event will have a mistake somewhere in the date and time information. So they're surprisingly easy to get wrong. Make sure you have it right. And then following USU style. Does anybody know what that means or want to take a stab at defining what university style is? Yes. Yes, exactly. So we do have an internal set of rules or conventions for how we write both for and about the university. And I'll take you on a quick trip through the different pieces of USU style. So the first piece is, this is sort of our foundation for USU style, is we follow AP style. That is short for Associated Press style. Anybody who is a former journalist, like both of us are, we know it pretty well. It's used by most newspapers and a lot of other publications. It's generally less formal than a lot of other style guides out there, like Chicago Style or APA, because it was created specifically to help people read and quickly digest and understand news and information. So you can buy an AP style book. They still have them in print. I think when I was in journalism school, they were about an inch thick, and they just keep growing, and now they're like that big. But you know, it's nice to have on your shelf just as a reference to page through. Or there is an online AP style book that you can subscribe to. That's really handy because you can actually create your own personal style guide within the AP site, where you can sort of bookmarks the things that you're going back to again and again. Honestly though, you can usually just Google AP style and whatever it is that you're trying to figure out, like how to do correctly, and you'll probably come out with the right information. Since we are a university, we have a lot of specific terms that AP doesn't necessarily cover, like higher ed, academia. We have a whole different language from what a lot of people are used to seeing. So we also have things that we do differently from AP, like the university uses the serial comma. If you're writing a list in a sentence, then we use the comma before the and. AP style does not do that, so something to be aware of. But that's why we have USU editorial standards. You can find them on our brand website. We also, the handout that went out to everybody has a QR code that will take you directly to that guide. And it actually has several different pieces to it that can help you out when you have questions. The first is a writing style guide, and that will tell you things like what's capitalized, what's not, how do you refer to academic degrees or job titles, and this section will explain why we do things a certain way and give you examples on how to do it correctly. The punctuation and grammar guide, that's pretty self-explanatory. USU glossary is pretty much commonly used words that are specific to the university, that aren't like higher ed general, but more just here. And then we also have inclusion guidance, and that's a relatively new addition to our editorial standards. I think we added it about a year ago. And we created this section because we want everything that we write about the university, so that obviously includes the website, to be as welcoming as possible for all audiences, all readers. So this section provides guidance for writing about people's race, gender, ethnicity, disabilities, and other ways that they might describe or identify themselves. Back to Kat.
All right, so how many of you brought your smartphone with you today? How many of you have used your smartphone today to look at anything on the web? Congratulations, you're with 90% of the population. And so 60% as of 2021 of people who have smartphones were using them to look at websites. And this was in 2021, pre-pandemic. So this was before even using QR codes to look at restaurant menus and that kind of thing. So I would bet money that it's even higher now. which is another reason why it's so crucial for your website content to look good on a screen that's this big and is super short, and you're not going to be a giant block of text if someone pulls it up on their phone. And I don't know how many of you track how much time and battery power goes on your phone's like webs and apps rather than what it was originally designed for. Mine is probably 6 hours on websites and apps versus 20 minutes on texting and calling as an average. So that's something that's evolved over time. And it's also a good reason to make sure that your next steps and your CTAs are going to be great on a website that's being read on a phone. For example, our little cheat sheet we gave you, it's got a QR code. It's awesome. Then you don't have to type out the really long URL that's above it. But if this is on a phone, are people going to be able to scan that QR code? You can? Okay. It's easy. Okay. Well, you know what? That's a new thing we're learning today, right here. Congratulations for coming on this journey with me and realizing that I am not a professional speaker. That is 3 steps, though, versus 1 step of a link that's highlighted that you can just touch with your finger or a button you can click with your finger. So generally speaking, avoid using QR codes for things that aren't printed, but apparently that's not a set rule. And then this is a lot of information we've thrown at you today. I don't know about you, but I get writer's block sometimes. And generally, the bigger the project is, the harder it is for me to find the motivation to get started and even determine what my next steps are. And this is where we can give AI the chance. It wouldn't really be a web conference if we didn't talk about AI. And so, how many of you have used any of those kinds of AI tools? Okay, see? Awesome. Do you guys have favorites so far? You can just yell them out. Bing? Okay, I haven't even played with theirs yet. That's good. Anyone else? Yep. ChatGPT. I don't know what your project management is like. In UMac, we use ClickUp as our project management, and it actually has a built-in AI tool that's also awesome. So for me personally, I've used a lot of ChatGPT and the ClickUp AI, and it's got some really good things and some really bad things. Like when it came out last year, my team was very split on whether it was useful or not. I thought it was worthless. But after the past few months, it's gotten so much better that I use it almost every day now. And so it's really important to know what it's good for and what it's not good for so that when you're using it to help with your websites, you're not making your life way more difficult than it has to be. So it's really great for brainstorming and outlining. So if you have to give a presentation like this and you know you want to talk about a couple things but don't know where to start, ask it where it would start and get some ideas. It's also great for repurposing materials. So this right here, these 6 sheets of paper, this was our outline for our presentation. We didn't know what we wanted to do for our handout. So we plugged it into ChatGPT and said, hey, how about you make it look better? And eventually, it took a little manhandling on our part, but it got to this. So if you have like a giant article, say from a magazine or a white page, and you know you want some of that content on your website, you can use AI to help determine what the key points of information are, and then use that as an outline for your website. However, AI is like a really helpful assistant that's just not the smartest in critical thinking. So don't assume everything it gives you is accurate. For example, with the new Harari Peace Institute, I was playing around with it, seeing if it would catch when I misspelled that, because it's not a common name. It didn't. In fact, it made it worse. So you always want to, as Jen said, make sure you're triple checking names, dates, locations, that kind of thing. And you never want to publish it directly from ChatGPT. Another thing with AI is that the copyright is kind of in a gray area with AI-generated content right now. So you definitely don't want to use it for things that you're going to publish and pass off completely as your own. And now, would you like to see ChatGPT in action? Okay. All right. So, let's see. For example, if I scroll all the way to the top, maybe. So, this is the prompt that I put in for the presentation. And there's all of our presentation data right there. And I said, make a cheat sheet. And eventually it'll come down, and it has this right here. This was pretty good. There were some nice bullet points, but we knew that we didn't want to give you 3 pages of tips. So we asked it to make it shorter and in a checkbox format to make it a little cuter. And it did that, made it only 3 lines. Pretty good. Some of these don't really need the headings that it gave it, though. So then we asked it once more. To make it shorter. And we got a list very similar to this lovely handout today. It still needed some work. Like, I still took out the mistakes that were before half the headings and combined some things when they were similar concepts. But as a whole, that saved a couple hours of work from me having to figure it out on my own. So AI can be your friend. It's just not the smartest of friends. So you have to give it a little help. You have to work in your prompt and change things if it doesn't give you the answer you want right immediately. Yeah, that's it for today.
When you do decide to play around with AI, I mostly use Bard, but be prepared for it to just take you down rabbit holes that you're not expecting, because you'll give it a prompt and it will write something that looks completely reasonable for 3/4 of the way through, and then you'll come across a fact that you're like, wait, what? And then I start Googling. You can actually ask most AIs to give you reference for a specific fact that you're questioning about. You can ask, like, provide where you found this information. I've gone so far as to have it tell me that information came from a Salt Lake Trib article from 2014 with the name of the article, which then I went searching the Trib website to see if that article actually did exist, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I don't know if that's a function of the Trib not having very great archives, or if the AI was just pulling stuff together to make it seem as though this was a plausible answer to the question that I was given it. So keep that in mind. Like, take everything that you get back with a grain of salt, and double check everything that needs to be checked, and and be prepared to take some wild left turns from whatever you thought you were starting with, working on.
Do you guys have anything else you want to see what ChatGPT can come up with? Or any questions for us? Yes.
Would you come up to the microphone so that all our audiences can hear?
I have no idea.
Ask it to tell you the top 5 things to do at Utah State University if you're only here for 24 hours.
Nice. Okay. Well, we're 1 for 1 so far. Do I need to reread it for web? I know. All right, so I would agree with probably most of those. So that one was a good one. Good question, Anyone else? Do you want to see how it repurposes things?
Ask it why it didn't say Aggie ice cream.
Yeah. See? So right there, there's a blog post for you. You just have to add an Aggie ice cream.
About a month ago, Kat and I we attended a virtual conference that was about AI for writers and how to get started using it. And one thing that they talked a lot about is how if you're going to work with AI, the skill that is going to be most needed in developing is your prompt skills and being able to really nail down what it is that you're asking the AI to do. And that's why it's great that you can take the same starting point of text and keep asking it to basically be better in the way that you want it to be better. But that is going to be a skill set that's important as people start using this tool more and more.
Yes, Simon.
Has there been talk about, I'll wait for
Okay.
Sorry, Simran, should have brought you yours instead of making you come all the way.
Has there been any talk in UMAC about training a bot to help us run our stuff through to check it for USU standards and suggest changes? Because it seems like something we could do to expedite a lot of work.
Well,
Not on my side.
on our side, it was brought up. The only downside is when you really have the customized bots, you have to feed them so much data. And a lot of the already existing platforms that offer that kind of customization, they want full access to everything on your site. As a security issue and FERPA issue, we can't really provide a bot every single bit of data that USU collects. It's just asking for a security breach that we don't really want right now. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. At this point, it's not feasible, like based on the technology that's existing. But as I've proven this morning, technology changes faster than even I can keep up with. So I can see that happening in the future, but at the moment, it's not something that we're pursuing.
And it can seem kind of overwhelming just to start getting into AI. The conference that we attended, there was one speaker who went through a list of at least 24 different AIs that exist for slightly different reasons. Like you can have, there are AIs that you can plug a story into and it will make a movie for you or create an image that you want. So I was just like, there's too much.
Yeah.
It's relatively, recent technology as far as being available to the general public, but it is growing so quickly and changing so quickly that you can feel already overwhelmed with the options that are out there. And so that's why I think our advice would be to just pick one and jump in and start getting familiar with it, because it's not going to go away. It is going to continue to grow, and there are things that you can do with it that are super useful for your work.
I was trying to pull up. I have that list from the AI conference on my phone. I cannot remember where I saved it, but if you would like to learn more about them, I will track that down for you.
Yeah, I think I kept that
Yeah.
slideshow, so we can share that with folks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I would like that AI slideshow that you mentioned. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
My name is Connie. I work in the Office of Global Engagement. I have a question for you about email signatures. I email tons of students every day and prospective students as well. And the typical format for us to use an email signature is, as the USU branding website indicates, to have the actual city and state, and we also indicate USA as well as our office address. That goes under the phone number, the email address if we're going to put it, the website, and that is confusing for international students. That's our main audience. Is it okay to change that so that maybe the email and telephone number information is under the address of our office and the email signature?
I think that in your situation where you are thinking specifically about your users and putting them first and what's going to be most understandable for them, that is a reason to maybe do it differently in your area than putting the usefulness for your readers above consistency for consistency's sake, basically. Yeah, I think that's totally fine.
Okay, wonderful. I'll get that changed. Thank you so much.
Permission granted. My boss isn't here today. She doesn't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
I have a question about picking keywords to optimize your SEO and how you know what the best keywords are. And, I do a couple programs, and if I don't need Google search, I'm actually generally competing with other USU web pages like USU Online and stuff, which might not have as much information as our college web pages. So how we can be at the top of the list.
Can you give us a little bit more specificity about your department? So
Yeah,
give us
sure. I
some
mean,
examples?
I'm
Okay.
right now doing the Master of Natural Resource program, which is an online program, and the GIS certificate. And I often get, emails from students that, have questions, just basic questions that are easily answered, but they're on our QCNR websites, but I don't think they're seeing those. I think they're going to the USU Online, but just, in general, improving, especially if you just Google Master of Natural Resources, how do we get USU to pop up versus University of Idaho or, any of the other schools that offer other degrees.
Well, one thing too is where on your page is that information? Because if you're saying it's on the page, then it's obvious that you have the information. You just need to bump it up higher in the page so that when the search engines are looking for pages, they see it immediately. It's you want your most important information at the top. So have that Master of Natural Resources be a headline really high up on your page, and that'll help for that one portion. Other options.
If you know that your program has specific attributes that people are likely to be searching for, like research opportunities, things like that, make sure that you're using those as headings in your pages as well, and that will help bring more attention, both from people who are scanning your pages because they're already here, but that will also highlight those pieces, those key attributes of your program for the search engines that are going to give these results.
So is the program only online? Too. Okay. Yeah, you might want to have that as a headline too, and that'll help kind of boost it compared to the USU Online page. And you could also talk to them and consider cross-promoting and just linking to each other to avoid repeating. All right, I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has one.
No?
Oh, okay.
Julie's going to get a lot of steps today.
So in theory, using ChatGPT or another AI, if your website is content heavy, like text heavy, you could put the whole content in there and say, simplify this or
Yep.
bullet this or list this.
Yeah.
And you're just checking, will it change the facts that you have input? Or
Double check
you're
that.
double checking that.
Yeah.
Okay. You double check everything
You're
that
gonna
it
have to
outputs.
double check, but it's going to give you a pretty good idea of where you can trim it down.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it may mash pieces together in ways that it thinks make sense,
But it's not accurate
but
to
don't
the
actually
information.
make sense.
Okay.
So yeah, be sure that you read it. But you can say, like, make these paragraphs shorter. Like, insert more bullet lists, things like that, and it'll do it. But definitely
Double check for
read
accuracy.
carefully
Yeah.
everything that it gives you back. But it is super helpful for something like that.
So in your experience, ChatGPT would be the one for that output.
I would use Bard for that as well, but those are the two that I've mostly played around with. I'm just more familiar with Bard, but either is fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so
they're
much.
just some of the original ones, and so we've
Yeah,
definitely had more time to play
They're
with them.
like the OGs right now of public-facing AIs.
But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We
Yeah,
hope that-
thank you.